I got to spend some time with him yesterday. This guy's a great guy, inside out. He's a Christian man. He's obviously a strong supporter of our Constitution and our Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms without any infringements. He told me something I found very unique. He doesn't just advocate for us in English. He's the only gun advocate anywhere in any organization that is fluent in Spanish. So can you imagine how he just ridiculed and tore down all those people on CNN in Spanish, and they didn't know what to do? Because this white guy comes along and he's better at it than they are. But Larry is a great guy, and he is, I can't say enough, he's a great American. I hope you all will welcome him. This is the largest crowd in Oklahoma that he spoke to in this trip. So thank you, Larry.
There's a lot of energy in this room. It's wonderful to be here. And just thank you all so much for your support for freedom, because that's really why we're here. We know that there's a war going on. The Colonel mentioned that, and I was glad that he did, because this is for real. They are coming to take everything we have. We're fighting socialists, and that's what socialists do. They take everything they can get their hands on. And what they can't get their hands on, they mess up. And so we've got a real battle, not only for ourselves, but for our children, our grandchildren, and if I hang on long enough, I may be even able to see some great-grandchildren. So this is a long-term fight that we're in. This has been going on a long time before we came on the stage. The enemies of freedom have an agenda, and all too often we don't. And I think that's partly because we've divorced our biblical understanding from our politics, and we have then been subjected to people who are better at the game than we are, because we've disarmed ourselves morally and spiritually. So from today on, hopefully, and really before, we've been seeing, I think, a growing awareness on the part of many, many Americans that we are in a battle, and as the Colonel said, it's both a real political one, but it's also a spiritual one. And we're not going to win this one unless we spend some time on our knees. The legislation that's in Washington is something that gives us some hope that maybe something good might come out of Washington, although you'll believe it when we're able to announce the victory. The most hopeful piece of legislation for any kind of enactment would be the measure that Senator Thune has that would say your concealed carry permit is to be treated as your driver's license. You have it in Oklahoma, you can show up in Missouri, no other questions asked. And that's the way it should be. That's not the way it is right now. We've let our employees tell us when and if and how we can have a gun and where. And that just doesn't make any sense. We've let ourselves get slapped around by people that work for us, and I'm hopeful that there's a rise in the mood in this country that says, enough. We're taking our country back. Assuming Senator Thune gets the votes, he could conceivably put that on a spending measure, and it might or might not even go through the House. The House would approve it if they had it as a standalone, but if he modifies the spending bill, it will go back to the House, and then it could go to a conference committee. It could, if it's on a spending bill that the president wants bad enough, it could actually end up getting signed into law, because it would ride along with the spending measure. That's how we got rid of the ban on guns in national parks. And Obama wanted to mess up the credit card industry more than he cared about letting us carry a gun in a park. And so he signed what was in effect both measures. So that can be done again, Lord willing, and that is the drill going on in Washington. But really more hopeful, as far as I can see, is what's happening in the states and at the county level. We were privileged to give an award to a sheriff who really deserved it, and happily, he's not alone. There are sheriffs like him around the country who are telling the feds, if you don't want to get arrested, stay out of my county. If you think you need to come in and grab somebody's guns or tell somebody that they can't go into a national forest to drag out a dead tree, for goodness sakes, I got room for you in my jail. And hopefully we don't have to expand the sheriff's jail. Hopefully he's got enough facility to accommodate anybody that needs to be there from the federal government. But so far they've been hearing this kind of language coming from our sheriffs, and they've backed down in many cases that I'm aware of around the country, whether it be the Midwest, whether it's the West Coast. There are sheriffs all around the country who are saying very clearly to the feds, I'm the top cop in my county, and you'd better recognize that, and if you want to do anything in my county, you come and see me first, and I'll decide whether you can do that in my county. And that's, I think, one of the ways we're going to take our freedom back, because these sheriffs, and sometimes I think it's even very explicitly said. For instance, one of our members is the sheriff of Elkhart County, Indiana, Pratt, and a farmer came to him and said, they don't like my raw milk. They really don't think there should be raw milk in production. I don't know what it is about the feds, but that really gets their knickers twisted. And so they had numerous inspections. They were threatening to confiscate his equipment. So Rogers went out and looked at the guy's farm to make sure he wasn't going to be defending a pig in a poke. And as expected, the farm was pristine. You don't sell raw milk unless you really have a clean shop. And so he went back to his office and pounded out an email to the attorney for the EPA back in Washington. And he said, you're not going to do anything to Farmer Hofstetler, and if you put a foot on his land, a foot, I will arrest you. And she shot back, well, if you try that, we'll arrest you. And Sheriff Rogers reported back, game on. That was over a year ago, and the game is still on. The milk's being produced, and as far as I've been able to tell, no dead bodies yet as a result of that wicked raw milk. But that's the kind of thing that the feds have gotten so used to. Well, we made a law, therefore we have a supremacy clause in the Constitution. Well, there is a supremacy clause in the Constitution, yes indeed. And if you read the Constitution, which is probably something they haven't done, the clause is in the context of a clause that makes federal law supreme under the authority of the United States. Well, they don't have authority to regulate my guns. They don't have authority to regulate your farm. They don't have authority to do a whole bunch of things. The only thing they have authority to do is in Article 1, Section 8, and there's a couple other things elsewhere in the Constitution, and that's it. And so this huge bureaucracy that's driven up the price of my house beautifully in Washington, D.C., really should be chased away so that, happily my house is paid for it, and I could stand to take the hit, but property values need to go down in Washington, D.C., because we need to be getting rid of all the bureaucrats that are beasting. This is, I think, it's going to be looked back upon as a defining moment in our history. And to have sheriffs who are willing to stand in the breach, to put themselves between us and an out-of-control federal government, is a wonderful development. It's a remarkable development, and it's something that we need to encourage, to thank these people as we did today, and to hopefully what we're doing today is going to bring to the fore other sheriffs in this state who will realize that, yeah, I need to take a stand and I need to make a statement on this. Former Sheriff Richard Mack has organized a number of conferences, well, 2 so far, on being a constitutional sheriff. And he brings in people like Sheriff Rogers to say, well, this is what I did in my county. So it's not just Larry Pratt talking about it, it's actual sheriffs reporting on how they told the feds to butt out or spend some time courtesy of the county. And that this movement is, I think, of great encouragement to these sheriffs. I was riding back from the second conference, and there were a couple of sheriffs behind me talking, and at one point they agreed that, yeah, I had really kind of supported this idea before I got here, but now that I've attended, I'm going to go back home and put all this into practice. And the other one said, me too. So it's very important, and hopefully we'll have more conferences, and you'll be able to send your sheriffs who are even open to the idea and haven't maybe even made a decision as to how they would handle the federal government if the federal government came in and said, I'm going to take away your dairy equipment, farmer. Well, what is the sheriff going to do? It makes a difference who the sheriff is, because in Wisconsin, around the same time that Brad Rogers was telling the feds that he had room for them in his jail, in Wisconsin, the sheriff just let it happen, and the farmer lost his equipment. He was out of business. They bankrupted the guy with no authority, just bigger guns and a sheriff that didn't understand what his job really was. And by the way, I haven't been in every one of these counties where there's a sheriff who thinks this way, but my impression is that if the voters of the county will elect a sheriff who's willing to take such a position, and the sheriff needs more deputies than whatever his force might be, 1,500, 200 deputies, there is a reserve of men in the county. Constitutionally, it's called a militia. Probably under state law, it's called the posse. The posse. And I've been in counties where I know the men would be more than happy to come forward.
Yeah.
Raise that right hand. And I think that one of the most effective recruiters for these sheriffs is the gentleman in the White House who has kind of clarified a lot of our thinking as to what are the limits of government and what needs to be done. And clearly, an effective no, it's good to write letters, and we encourage our members of Gun Owners of America to write letters, and we provide them postcards and email to send, and that's very important. But it's also important for them to know that there are physical limits to their abuse of power. And this is what's so exciting about the time that we're living in right now. Make my notes go away. Oh, well, that's all right. You've got, as was mentioned, you've got legislation in this state right now that tells the feds if you break this law, we're going to put you in jail. And this is really important if we can get state legislatures to take stands and to put the feds on notice that we're quite serious, we're quite willing to have you incarcerated. And by the way, keep in mind that if a fed is convicted of, I don't know what your bill in Oklahoma provides, but if the criminal penalty is 366 days or more, now I think somebody did tell me it's 5 years, so it's well more than needed, because I'm not all that interested in putting somebody guilty of offending in this area into jail. That just costs money. But what would happen if they are convicted of a crime where they could have been incarcerated for 366 days? Is the loss of their gun rights forever? They're no longer a cop. That is a serious way to communicate to federal agents that we really don't want you messing around in our state. basically, Oklahoma is going to be the 5th state. There are 4 already that are on record. And Wyoming is the one that led the way with an actual penalty. It's the only one so far. And even they didn't get it quite right. They stopped at 365. And I asked the fellow that had gotten the bill through the legislature, why just 365? If you'd made it one more day, look at what would happen. He said, I didn't know that. I just pulled that number out because so many other laws use that number of days. And I said, well, you think you can remedy that? He said, we're going to work on it next session, which is something that they've been working on right now in Wyoming. So hopefully Wyoming will be a 366-day penalty for the feds. And I think the state of Wyoming has quite a few sheriffs who would be quite prepared to enforce that law. So in what we're talking about, it would be a company that makes it, say they make a 45 caliber handgun, and they don't put any serial numbers on it, they don't communicate what they're doing to the federal government, they don't have any licenses, they have whatever business licenses the state of Wyoming requires, so they're copacetic in Wyoming. And the feds say that would be a federal offense. In fact, several federal offenses. And the state of Wyoming is saying, it really doesn't matter what you think, because what you think is unconstitutional and unenforceable, and we're here to make sure you don't. I don't think these states and these sheriffs are looking for trouble. I think they're just trying to make it clear to the federal government that, guys, go read the Constitution. It's laid out rather clearly what we are telling you to do. There are expressly delegated powers there. That's what you've been told to do. And then the 10th Amendment, in case you couldn't figure it out otherwise, says that if it's not been delegated to the federal government expressly, then all the other powers are reserved to the states and to the people. Pretty clear. And I think this is going to be perhaps the great tension in our politics for some time to come. And it means that who gets elected to the state legislature and who gets elected to be your county sheriff is a whole lot more important than who gets elected to go to Congress. Because he may or may not be able to change a mess in Washington, because he's going to be outnumbered conceivably in Washington. But in Oklahoma, your sheriff and your state legislature really can get a lot of things done and make it so that Oklahoma will be more and more attractive as a place to do business. Mag Plus is now in the position of almost certainly having to take their large magazine, high-capacity magazine business, manufacturing business, out of state. They don't want to stay in a state that says their product is illegal. And so I know that there are legislators in your state who for at least 2 weeks have extended invitations to Mag Plus. Y'all come to Oklahoma. We're gun-friendly, and we're very friendly to business in general, and we think you'd like it here just fine. And you just may see 600 jobs showing up here in Oklahoma because of the stupidity and the greed of the socialists controlling the Colorado legislature. Yeah. So, you ought to be sending thank you letters to the President of the Senate and the Speaker of the House in Colorado because these are 600 very nice jobs, actually. Thank you very much. And you've got the folks that are trained to do these jobs here in this state. So you've got the table set, the food's on the stove, everything's ready for them to come and pay a visit. So I think you seriously ought to write some letters and supplement what's been communicated already by your legislators. Let them know that they may live in a wacko land in Colorado, but there's still a lot of sanity left here in Oklahoma. And it would be a wonderful thing to do business in Oklahoma. I think I just want to cut off there.